A 74-year-old man sat in my office. His hands trembled not from illness, but from something quieter, harder to detect, and far more common. He looked at me, eyes heavy with regret, and said, "I didn't know. I was hurting myself." For years, like millions of men his age, he had followed the same private routine, believing it was harmless, even healthy, never realizing it was quietly working against his body, his mind, and his confidence. And he wasn't alone. I'm Dr. Thalo Markos. After more than 30 years working in men's health, I've had countless conversations just like this one. Conversations filled with confusion, shame, and a deep yearning for answers that never came. That's why this message matters, because what most doctors don't say out loud could be the very thing older men need to hear the most. Here's the truth. After 60, masturbation changes. Your body, your hormones, your nerve responses, they all evolve. But if your habits stay stuck in the past, they might do more harm than good. And what you've been told, it's natural, it's fine, it's just part of being a man, only scratches the surface. The truth is, how you masturbate matters far more than you think. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 vital secrets about masturbation that older men across the country wish they'd known sooner. These aren't random tips, they're real-life experience-backed truths that can protect your circulation, preserve your prostate health, and most importantly, help you feel like yourself again. Stick around until the very end, because the final insight could reshape not just your relationship with your body, but how you age, how you connect, and how you live. Let's begin with something most men are never told. Your erection is no longer the whole story. And that's okay. I remember one particular moment. An older gentleman, 72, came in with a look of frustration and quiet shame. He said, "Doc, I just can't do what I used to. Does that mean I'm not a man anymore?" That hit me hard, not because the question surprised me, but because I've heard it echoed so many times in different words from different men, all carrying the same silent fear. They start noticing the shift, things aren't as firm, as fast, or as reliable as they once were. And many assume that means their sexuality is over, that it's the end. But here's what I want every man over 60 to understand. This is not the end. It's not a failure. It's not broken. It's evolution. As we age, our bodies change. That's not a weakness, it's nature. Blood flow slows, testosterone levels fluctuate. Nerve endings take longer to respond. The quick automatic reactions of youth now require patience, presence, and a new kind of attention. And this shift doesn't mean your sexuality is lost. In fact, it might be the beginning of something deeper and more meaningful if you allow it to be. The world most of us grew up in taught us to equate manhood with performance. We were told to measure our masculinity by how long we lasted, how hard we were, how often we could go. Vulnerability, emotional presence. That was never part of the lesson. No one pulled us aside to say, "Hey, intimacy still matters. Pleasure still counts, even if it looks different now." But the truth is, it does matter. Connection, closeness, and even climax, they don't disappear just because erections become unpredictable. And here's something powerful: orgasm and erection are not the same thing. You can still feel deep pleasure, emotional release, and physical satisfaction without the rigid standards of youth. I've worked with men who went years believing they were defective, believing that because things weren't working like before they were broken. But when we talked, when they finally understood what was happening, their lives began to shift. They stopped feeling ashamed. They started feeling human again. And that shift, that mental rewiring, it matters more than any pill or procedure. Because what's important now isn't the pressure to perform. It's the permission to be present. It's not about chasing what was. It's about discovering what is. When you stop comparing your body to a younger version of yourself and instead meet it where it is today, with patience, curiosity, and respect, you open up a whole new door to intimacy. One that's slower, softer, but no less powerful. One where you're not trying to prove anything. You're just trying to feel, to connect, to be real. I've seen it happen. I've seen men cry tears of relief because for the first time in decades, they no longer felt broken. They felt understood. That's why this first truth matters so much. Because it's not just about sex, it's about identity. It's about reclaiming the part of yourself that was never really lost, only misunderstood. And this is just the beginning. Because in the next secret, we're going to explore something even deeper. Something most men never connect to this topic, but once they do, it changes everything. What if masturbation was never just about sex? What if it was also about memory, emotion, and the quiet rituals that keep us connected to who we are that might sound surprising, even strange? But for many men, especially after 60, that's exactly what it becomes, a private moment that holds far more meaning than we were ever taught to see. I once sat across from a retired veteran in his late 70s. His name was Howard. He didn't come in with a medical emergency. He didn't even come in with a specific complaint. He simply said, "I don't feel anything anymore." And he didn't just mean sexually, he meant emotionally, spiritually, even physically. At first, we both assumed it was just a matter of aging, maybe hormones, circulation, or nerves. But as we talked more, the truth became clearer. Howard wasn't struggling because of a lack of desire. He was struggling because he had been using masturbation as a way to survive, not to feel pleasure, but to fill a silence. For years, he had been touching himself almost every night. Not out of lust, not out of habit, but as a way to fall asleep, to escape the loneliness, to ease the ache of days spent in silence. He had no idea that this simple, quiet ritual had become his only outlet for emotional release. That conversation changed how I saw him, and how he saw himself. Masturbation after 60 isn't just a physical act. It's deeply tied to the brain, the nervous system, and emotional well-being. After orgasm, the body releases a powerful cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These aren't just pleasure chemicals. They regulate sleep, they lower anxiety, they improve mood. For men who live alone or feel emotionally isolated, this act can become the only moment in the day when they experience a sense of connection, calm, and control. But here's where the danger quietly creeps in. When that ritual becomes automatic, something you do just to pass time or numb a feeling you haven't named it, it starts to lose its meaning. The touch stays, but the emotion fades. That's what happened to Howard. He wasn't broken, he was disconnected. Men of our generation were raised to be tough. We were told to bury our feelings, to keep things locked inside. Vulnerability was considered weakness. So when the only time we allow ourselves to let go is during a moment of self-touch, it stops being just about release. It becomes survival, a hidden cry for connection. Most men don't realize that their bodies aren't just seeking pleasure, they're reaching for peace, for stillness, for something human. And when that moment is done, without awareness, without intention, it slowly dulls the ability to connect with yourself on any deeper level. But the good news is, that can change. When you approach masturbation with presence, with a sense of emotional clarity and respect, it becomes something healing, something grounding. It becomes a practice not just for physical satisfaction, but for emotional regulation and neurological health. And yes, even at your age, that kind of healing matters more than ever. But here's something even more urgent. What if the opposite approach, the belief that this part of life is over, that touching yourself is no longer necessary or appropriate, was causing harm in ways no one ever warned you about? There's a rule in biology that many of us know, but few understand: use it or lose it. Let me tell you about Roy. He was 74, widowed, quiet. He had just started dating again after more than a decade alone. But when he came to see me, he wasn't happy. He was ashamed. I finally found someone, he said, but my body, it doesn't work anymore. You could hear the heartbreak in his voice, the grief, the fear. He thought he was broken, that it was too late to feel again. But the truth is, Roy wasn't suffering from dysfunction. He was suffering from disuse. This is a truth I wish every man over 60 could understand. Your sexual function isn't just tied to age, it's tied to activity. Just like muscles shrink when we stop moving, the tissues and blood vessels in your penis respond to how often they're stimulated. When there's no sexual activity, whether alone or with a partner, those tissues begin to weaken. Nerve endings dull. Elasticity fades. Blood flow slows. And the saddest part, most men never know this is happening until it already has. Roy hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't want to, but because he assumed that part of life was over, that it didn't matter anymore. But while he was turning away from it, his body was slowly adapting to the neglect, closing doors that could have stayed open with just a little attention. What he didn't realize was that gentle, consistent stimulation without pressure or shame can help the body remember. It may not happen overnight, but with time, patience, and presence, those sensations can return. That spark can reignite, and with it, a piece of your confidence can come back to life. The truth is, many men believe that if they don't have a partner, their sexual health isn't worth maintaining. That belief is not just wrong, it's dangerous. Because masturbation at this stage of life isn't just about desire. It's about function, about health, about staying connected to your own vitality. You still matter. Your body still wants to respond. And when you give it the chance, when you choose to stay connected rather than retreat into silence, you are choosing life. Movement, dignity. Because in the end, this isn't just about sex. It's about staying awake to who you are. And that journey is far from over. Roy had not touched himself in years. Not because he didn't want to, but because he believed it no longer mattered. He thought it was just a natural part of aging, like fading hair or stiff joints. Life had dulled his desire, and with it he quietly let that part of himself go. What he didn't realize was that while his attention drifted elsewhere, his body was adapting to the neglect. Bit by bit, those once responsive systems began to close down. Nerve endings dulled. Blood flow weakened. Sensations that once came easily became faint and distant. And no one ever told him this was happening. No one warned him that those doors, once open, could begin to close without a single word of protest from the body. But the story doesn't end there. It wasn't too late. With gentle, steady effort, not force, not pressure, just simple presence, Roy began to feel things again. Slowly, his body started to remember. The change wasn't dramatic. It didn't happen overnight, but it was real. And more than that, it was hopeful. Alongside those returning sensations came something even more powerful, a spark of confidence, a quiet reminder that he was still here, still capable of pleasure, still alive in every sense of the word. There's a belief among many older men that unless they have a partner, their sexual health doesn't matter. That if there's no one to share it with, it's no longer worth preserving. That belief is not only false, it's dangerous. Because your sexual health is not just about pleasure. It's about function. It's about circulation. It's about tissue health, hormonal regulation, mental clarity, and emotional well-being. It's about reminding your body that it still matters. That you still matter. Masturbation in later life isn't about chasing youth or escaping reality. It's about maintaining connection with the body you live in. It's a simple, powerful act that keeps systems awake and tissues responsive. It sends a message through your nervous system that says, I'm still here. I still feel. I still care about this life. But if neglect can cause quiet damage, what happens when the opposite goes unchecked? What if the way you're staying sexually active is actually rewiring your brain in the wrong direction? That brings us to a different kind of risk, one that is less visible but just as real. One evening, I had a long talk with Ernest, a 68-year-old widower. He shared something that I've heard many times, but that still hits hard every time I hear it. He said, I still touch myself, but I feel disconnected. It's like nothing really reaches me anymore. At first he thought it was just age catching up with him, but the more we talked, the clearer it became. His nightly ritual of watching porn, something he had turned to for comfort and stimulation, had slowly been rewiring his brain. Without realizing it, he had taught his body to respond only to screens, not touch, not connection, not even his own imagination. This is something most older men never hear. But they need to. As the brain ages, it becomes less adaptable, less flexible. And when high-intensity porn becomes the main source of stimulation, it alters the brain's wiring. The sudden bursts of dopamine triggered by constant novelty, fast pacing, and extreme visuals start to reshape how the mind and body respond to sexual cues. Over time, the brain begins to expect that intensity, and only that intensity, in order to react. Real life can't compete. The result? A gradual loss of sensitivity, a fading of arousal, a creeping sense that something isn't working even though the desire is still there. This change doesn't happen overnight. It sneaks in. It feels comforting at first, a habit that helps you fall asleep or fill the quiet. But one day you realize the images on the screen move you more than real human connection. You notice that your imagination has gone quiet, that even your own touch feels distant and dull. Ernest described it perfectly. He said it felt like being in a room with the lights on but no windows. He could see, but he couldn't connect. We worked together, slowly, without judgment, just with patience. He stepped back from the screen and began to reconnect with his own body, his breath, his thoughts, his emotions. Within a few weeks, something shifted. His sensitivity returned. His imagination came back online. He began to feel again in real time, in real ways. That change gave him hope. It reminded him that he wasn't broken, just misaligned. And with small adjustments, his body responded. These stories matter because they reflect a truth few men are ever taught. After years of silence, shame, or simple misunderstanding, many carry the belief that this part of life is over, that their ability to feel, to want, or to connect is gone. But what so many older men deserve to know is this: your capacity for intimacy, for arousal, for emotional connection, it never truly disappears. It just needs the right environment to return. And this brings us to one final truth, one that ties everything together, one that might just change the way you see yourself for the rest of your life. There's something powerful that could change the way you see yourself, your health, and your future. Something often misunderstood, even feared. But once seen clearly, it becomes a tool for healing, for reconnection, and for reclaiming a part of yourself you may have thought was gone. Masturbation can be a lifeline, not a liability. Walter was 75 when he came in for a routine checkup. He was soft-spoken, kind, and carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had lived through much. As the visit wrapped up, he paused. Then came the question, one I've heard more times than I can count. "Doctor," he asked, "is it still okay to touch myself at this age?" His voice was hesitant, almost ashamed, as if he were confessing a secret rather than asking a simple question about his own health. But what Walter didn't know, and what so many older men were never told, is that the answer is not just yes. It's absolutely yes. Masturbation at this stage of life is not something to hide. It may in fact be one of the most vital acts of self-care you still have within your reach. When done with intention and presence, it offers more than temporary relief. It supports circulation in your pelvic region. It helps your prostate by clearing fluids that otherwise stagnate. It eases anxiety, improves mood, and enhances sleep through the natural release of neurochemicals like oxytocin and serotonin. These aren't abstract benefits. They're measurable. They're biological. They matter. But the most important impact is something science alone can't measure. It keeps you connected to the part of yourself that still feels desire, the part that still carries identity, the part that says, I am still here, I still feel, I still matter. Walter had lost that connection. When his wife passed away, he shut everything down, not just his routines, but his relationship with his own body. For nearly 6 years, he denied himself even a moment of personal pleasure, not because he didn't feel the need, but because he believed it was no longer appropriate. I didn't think I was allowed to still be that kind of man, he said. That sentence stuck with me, because I've heard it echoed in the voices of so many other men who were raised in a culture that told them to age quietly, to shrink, to disappear. That pleasure was for the young. That desire was a phase to grow out of. But that belief is a lie. Desire doesn't vanish. It softens. It changes. It becomes quieter. And if you don't learn to hear it in its new form, it turns into something much harder to carry loneliness. When Walter began to reconnect with himself again gently and without shame, everything changed. He didn't become younger, but he became lighter. His mood lifted. He slept more peacefully. He laughed more easily. He wasn't chasing youth. He was reclaiming dignity. That's what masturbation can be in later life. Not an escape from aging, but a return to self. A way to say, I still exist. I still belong in my own body. And when we take all these truths together, they lead us to a message that matters more than any medical textbook or clinical study. A message that goes straight to the heart of what it means to age with strength, confidence, and respect for yourself. There are 5 secrets older men wish they had known sooner. But they're more than secrets. They're lessons learned through lived experience, through regret, through rediscovery, and through finally giving themselves permission to feel again. The first secret revealed that your erection does not define your manhood. So many men live for years in quiet panic, unaware that intimacy, satisfaction, and deep connection are still possible, even if the mechanics have changed. The second secret showed us that masturbation is not just physical, it's emotional, it's neurological. It's a deeply human experience that when approached with awareness can ground you like nothing else can. The third secret warned us that disuse is not harmless. It's a slow, silent drift away from sensation, function, and connection. But with consistency and care, your body can remember. And it will respond. The fourth secret pulled back the curtain on porn. The way it slowly reshapes your brain, dulls your response to real-life connection, and distances you from your own senses. The good news is, stepping away can bring your sensitivity and imagination back to life. And the fifth secret, perhaps the most important of all, reminds us that masturbation isn't something shameful. It's a path back to your own identity. A way to keep your spirit, your senses, and your vitality alive. These aren't lessons for someone else. They are for the man who has lived, who has loved, who has lost, and who now wonders if there's still more to feel. The answer is yes. Desire doesn't retire. It evolves. It may grow quieter, but it never disappears. And when you meet your body, where it is not where it used to be, you open the door to something powerful. You are still a man. You are still whole, and you are still worthy. Whether you are single or partnered, sexually active, or just beginning again, these truths remain. You have not missed your chance. You have not lost your right to feel, to heal, to connect. Your age does not disqualify you. It may be the very reason you're finally ready. You still matter. Your story still matters. And there is more life waiting if you're willing to reach for it. Healthy Hues. Wellness is here to walk with you every step of the way. Over the years, I've spoken with countless men in their 60s, 70s, and even well into their 80s, who have looked me in the eye and said the same thing. I thought this part of my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to feel, nothing left to give. There's a quiet heartbreak in that belief. A sense of closing the door on your own vitality without ever being told you didn't have to. But after decades of working in men's health, one truth has become unmistakably clear to me. Desire doesn't retire. It doesn't pack up and leave just because you've crossed a certain birthday. It doesn't vanish with a number on a chart. It softens, it shifts, it adapts, but it never disappears. And when you learn to meet your body where it is not where it used to be, you begin to uncover something powerful. You are still a man. You are still whole. You are still deserving. It doesn't matter if you're single or married, active, or just starting to reconnect with yourself again. What matters is that you understand this part of your life was never gone. It was never broken. It was only waiting patiently for you to return to it. These 5 truths we've explored are not about changing who you are. They're about remembering what was always there. Dignity, worth, desire, presence. Your age does not disqualify you from feeling. from touching, from healing. In fact, it may be the very reason to begin now, because the further you go, the more valuable each reconnection becomes. And while no one may have given you permission before, you do not need anyone's approval to begin again. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to be willing to listen to what your body is quietly asking of you. Patience, attention, respect. There is no shame in that, only strength. There is no weakness in returning to yourself, only courage. What lies ahead is not a second-best version of life. It's a new chapter. One shaped not by performance, but by meaning. Not by pressure, but by presence. Not by comparison, but by connection. There is still so much more ahead for you. More to feel, more to explore, more to give, and more to receive. You are not invisible. You are not finished. And you are not alone. This is your time to rediscover the parts of you that never truly left. To rebuild the bridge between your mind and your body. To reclaim the quiet strength that was always yours. From here forward, let this be the beginning of something deeper, something real, something worthy of the life you've lived and the one you still have left to live. You deserve truth. You deserve support. And most of all, you deserve to feel alive again. Healthy Hues. Wellness stands with you, for everything still waiting to be remembered, for everything still possible, and for everything you still are.